Logged in, ready to go. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's E-Day, day to get her done. Okay, let's see. Rhonda, we got any additions to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chairman, there's no additions.
Okay. The county council, you want to read into the record what we got in closed session?
Yes, Chairman, you got two items for closed session today. The first is conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. The county negotiators are Adrian Caleb, and the employee organization is All Unit. There is an existing litigation that requires you to conference with legal counsel pursuant to Government Code 54956.9, subsection D1. The name of the case is the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, known as the EEOC, and the charge number is 485-2018-00353. It's David A. Lynn versus the County of Madera.
Any public comment on our closed session? They jumping up saying hi, so we will adjourn into closed session.
Bailey.
Ready? Okay. Do we have any report from closed session?
Chairman, there are no items to report from closed session.
Thank you. Okay, item number 3, we're going to open and close in memory of anybody that's got any person this way. I don't see any.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to mention something, not for anybody who has passed away, but I'd like to
Honor this
honor.
time. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I'd like to honor the Madera High School boys volleyball team that won the state championship in volleyball a week ago Saturday. So,
Tom, I actually have two.
Oh, okay.
For the Biscay family, longtime residents of Madera County, over 100 years they've lived and farmed here, as well as the Martinelli family, who they came together. Lauren and Howland and Nick Biscay married each other, but they both within a week lost grandmothers. So Leah Martinelli from Martinelli Properties right there on Q and Howard and Yosemite, where it all comes together. So I just wanted to open and close in the memory of Leah Martinelli, as well as Edith Biscay. Both passed away within a week of each other. So to the Biscay and Martinelli Howland families, I just want to open and close in their honor.
So we're doing that too, and thank you, Rob. I read that in the paper about them winning the state championship. But I also, while we're doing the honoring, I'd like to announce and honor Brittany Dyer, my chief of staff, standing back there. She dedicated her thesis to the 125th anniversary of Madera County, and she passed everything last Wednesday, a week from yesterday, and she's now a master woman. So we'll put that part of our honoring too.
I think Eric should honor someone in his family that won a championship.
Oh, well, thank you, Supervisor Frazier. Yeah, my son, who's a junior at Clovis North, his swim team won the Division I CIF championship for the Valley, Central Valley. So
Cool.
he went to state as well.
Thank you so much. Greg Perkins from the Grace Community Church will give the invocation. And Bark, would you lead the flag salute today? He's from the grand jury, comes here every week, so we ought to honor him too. So thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Greg and Bart. I appreciate that very much. The 125th anniversary, honoring the past, embracing the present, and looking ahead to the future. Got our picture's going to come up there pretty quick. There it is. For the election in July of 1921, the city of Madera fire precinct captains beckoned people to the polls by using the fire whistle to start and end the election, as well as wake up the citizens. I didn't hear that bell this morning. Did you guys hear it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I live in the mountains. You guys hear it down here. That's right. Precinct captains agreed to blow the whistle at 7 a.m. as a wake-up call and at 8 a.m. to start the election. They would parade through the districts with machines to haul voters to the polls. And they drove through their entire precinct blowing the horns and making all the noise possible to make sure everybody voted. You know, it'd be nice to know what the turnout was then.
Yeah,
You know,
pretty
because-
good.
Yeah,
It's pretty high.
In 1921, I'm sure a few people voted twice.
yeah, that's right. So anyway, it's an honor to be honoring our 125th birthday, and I love these history deals like this. So you guys are doing a good job digging this stuff up for us. So, okay, we're going to move on now to public comment.
Public comment. The first 15 minutes of each regular session is set aside for members of the public to comment on any item within the jurisdiction of the board, but not appearing on the agenda. Items presented under public comment may not be discussed or acted upon by the board at this time. For items appearing on the agenda, the public is invited to comment at the time the item is called for consideration by the board. Any person addressing the board at a public comment will be limited to a 3-minute presentation to ensure that all interested parties have an opportunity to speak. Any handouts to the board must be submitted to the chief clerk of the board for distribution to the supervisors. Anyone addressing the board is asked to print their name clearly on the speaker sheet at the podium. Also, all persons addressing the board may state their name and county of residence for the record.
Good morning, Bart. Your turn. Yep, you're up.
Board and Supervisor Wheeler, I just wanted to share a few thoughts. My name is Bar Kohlberg. I live in Madera County, and the thoughts I want to share with you are as a private citizen at this moment. I have enjoyed observing the board and all of your actions and all of your actions and meetings during this last year. My term with the grand jury ends at the end of this month. I'm termed out. And I believe that our county citizens are well represented with the leadership of you all and the decisions that you make as a board. Examples, the 125th anniversary celebration and the stories, how fantastic for those of us who weren't here 125 years ago, to be able to get some of these stories that have been from shared with others, but not with me, and probably the vast majority of the citizenry. And your road tour is a wonderful idea. It takes the government to the people.
Absolutely.
How fantastic. I wish you continued success in this and all matters which come before you. So thank you so very much, and I've really enjoyed observing our government in action.
Thank you for
so
your
much.
service.
Yeah.
Thank you for your service.
Any other public comment? Well, I just had one other little one. Maria Miranda was my chief of staff for quite a few years, and a lot of years, in fact. And she got her master's, and now she's doing a great job for the county. And Brittany, I know, she's back there hiding back there. She didn't want to hear me talk no more, but now she's done. I feel pretty honored to have two great women work for me and both get their masters. And I'm sure Brittany will probably knock down another job someplace and will keep working for me, but that's okay because anybody can improve themselves and I can be part of that. I'm just really proud. So I'm proud of those two ladies. So thank you guys. So I don't care what anybody said. Agenda number 5, consent calendar, and item B is going to be pulled. So when you make your motion, please do that. Any public comment on the consent calendar? Being none, I'll bring it back to the board. Any comment from the board members? Motion, please.
Move to approve
Second.
without B.
Item B. Pull item B out of.
And with that, I'll second it.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Call for the vote. Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Rodriguez? Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
Okay. Item number 7, regular session.
7A, Community and Economic Development Department Division, budget adjustments to upgrade posse. Discussion and consideration of approval of receipt of unanticipated revenue number 17125 in the amount of $600,000 derived from software maintenance operating transfer into computer equipment $5,000 for fiscal year 2017-2018. 2, discussion and consideration of approval of transfer of appropriations number 17126 in the amount of $412,000 transfer from CED building inspection permanent temp salaries, temporary salaries, retirement, group insurance, professional and specialized services, and CED planning, permanent salaries to CED planning operations transfers out for fiscal year 2017-18 to upgrade Posse 7 to Posse Winchester. 3, discussion and consideration of approval of receipt of unanticipated revenue number 17126 in the amount of $188,000 derived from CED building inspection construction permit to operating transfers out for fiscal year 2017-18. 4 votes required.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman. Matt Treber, Community Economic Development Director here. I have Becky Beavers, my Deputy Director of Planning. The item before you, as read into the record, is setting up and transferring from our salary savings that we've accrued throughout the fiscal year and our increased revenue from permit activity to transfer that into our software automation fund, which will allow us to upgrade our existing permit tracking system. We've done a lot of work on that and a lot of assistance from our IT department, and a big thanks to them through this process, and administration and Joel especially on that. We have gone through an RFP and an RFQ process. Now, before you today is not a contract or an upgrade to our existing system. It's simply allocating those funds into a protected account so that we can come back and we'll have a formal contract for the board's consideration. Allows flexibility. Those funds can move back if for some reason a contract wasn't entered into and the funds needed to be done somewhere else. We can certainly bring that back, but this is just moving those funds into our automation and providing them in a level of protection so that when we do come back with that contract, all those funds have been allocated, and it's not a request on the general fund to fund any of that. This is set up through we have a fee in place that we capture a permit fee on each one of our permits that are issued through that system to upgrade our software on the 3rd floor. So it is an important program. We issue approximately 8,000 permits, 5,000 to 8,000 permits annually out of that system, and do all of our inspections through that system. So it's something that we have not updated for some time, significant update. And when we bring it back before the board, we'll have a full presentation on what that update would look like and what it means to the public. It'll be fully web-based. It'll allow electronic permit submittal and plan checking to be done electronically. So everything, we get away from the paper aspect in a lot of ways, and really streamlines the inspection process for the public and provides increased staff time allowed for work, and we can increase our productivity there. So,
Yeah, I see you say something.
It's also going to provide an interface with the One Solution, the auditors program, so we can have a better accounting of all finances.
Great. I like that too. Okay, any questions about Brett?
So I know you guys have been talking about this a long time. This is money that you've been building up for this, right? And now it's time to just move that over. So this is not going to hit the general fund. It's been planned for through that automation fee, right?
Absolutely. So yeah, it's imperative. There's a reason we have not upgraded the system. We've been working with IT, and it's a lot of credit to Becky through this. And I should mention she's also promised to stay on board through the 16 to 18 month update process. So extends her stay with us. Of course, I just told her that, but it's on the record now.
This is nah, you guys.
I'll put that in my motion.
But you're exactly right, Supervisor. This has been set up. We had the fee set up approximately 2 years ago, and we accrue $12,000 to $15,000 a month into that permit fee.
Wow.
That comes from the permits, right? And it's a nominal fee. In most cases, it's $10 to $15 for a permit that goes into that. And the money that we're sweeping today is from our salary savings on this fiscal year. And with the increased permit activity we've seen primarily on the 41 corridor, but throughout the county, we've seen a major uptick. And, we're running a lean shop up there, but we're, customer service and making sure we're responsive has been key aspects there. So yes, the whole premise, and we certainly did not want to put any request or additional burden on the general fund to pick up this. This should be supported by our permit revenue, and we have a fee in place to do that. So it's not going to be a request. When we're back before the board for the formal contract, I intend to have it all covered from this software automation fund, and no general fund dollars would flow into it.
No, and we've been, asking, to do more with less, and I think you guys have proved that. And then through the salary savings, to do that, will this through the through these organizational issues that will upgrade to this Winchester, will that help create more operational efficiencies after you continue to have those savings?
Yes, absolutely. So it is a significant upgrade, and we'll have a lot of information when we bring that forward. But we do 8,000 inspections annually, approximately. Building inspections, code enforcement inspections. Public Works also utilizes the system for their grading. And we anticipate approximately 12 to 15 minute reducing of that time, because our inspectors will be out in the field. They'll have their iPhone or an iPad. They'll take their photos. They'll upgrade, input their notes, and it all flows directly into the system. Right now, they're out. They handwrite the notes. They come in. They type it into the computer. Right? It's redundant, and it's not. This system really gets us to the 21st century. They'll have the public will have access to see their status. There'll be an app on your phone, right? And really, and Becky hit on it a little bit, what this will also do is really drive so that all of our systems are talking together, right? And we've working with IT, CED did spend some money last year to upgrade some of the infrastructure on the back end, so that we're covered on the servers and all of those aspects, right? So we, it was obviously important that we get IT through this process, but we anticipate seeing significant time savings that will allow us to continue at our staffing levels, while also increasing customer service to the public out there and being more responsive and providing the public really better access to the permit flow. And more often than not, we get a lot of requests from the public. Hey, can we submit this digitally? Can we get digital plan checks? So this will all be set up. And as Becky said, one solution will have a component. We're working with our vendor and IT and looking at making sure 311 and Madco services, right, that we interface with them, because we get calls on the phone and we get complaints that come in online and through that system, and so that they all are generated and all talking to one another.
But you upgraded the hardware too already, so
Right.
You're not going to be running this Ferrari system on a Tercel.
That is the plan. So last year, yeah, we had some monies that had been built up in our software automation, and we working with IT, right? We made sure that we are purchasing whatever we need.
But that was just for you.
It's a Corolla, by the way.
Oh, Corolla. That's it. That's it.
David.
Yeah, I want to commend you, Matt. This is the way to do it. Building efficiencies into what we're doing and preparing way ahead of time for the funding of this. And this is the way we should do all of our planning. This is strategic. This is what comes from being strategic in our planning, is no consequence to the need of making this change, no consequence dollar-wise to the general fund, and nothing but efficiencies and benefit to the end user. And they're the ones also paying for the cost of this. Those who are using this system, they're going to benefit greatly from it. And I think they'd be happy to pay that little bit, that tiny amount of money that causes the efficiency that we're seeing in the end. So thank you very much for moving this forward.
Thank you.
I certainly can't take the credit. It really belongs to Becky. This has been her baby from day one, and she brought it to the county and has upkept it and maintained it since 2001, 2002.
Leadership.
So absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Becky.
Again, Becky. Any public comment on this item? Yeah, and then what's your pleasure, board?
Move to approve.
I'll second that.
Okay, we got a first, second. Roll call, please.
Call for the vote. Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Rodriguez? Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
Before we start on 7B, I forgot to announce at public comment time that we had a pretty big fire up in O'Neill's off at 211 last night. Didn't start till about 4 or 5 o'clock, and it's burnt 300 acres, and it's only 20% contained, but they had like 5 air tankers on it within an hour, so Cal Fire's on top of it again. So I don't think there's been any structures. Last night there wasn't anyway, so there's been damage from it. But fire system season is out there. Please get your places cleaned up, man.
Yep.
7B.
7B, County Administration Department, end-of-year budget adjustments. 1, discussion and consideration of approval of transfer of appropriations from number 17-132 in the amount of $129,000. Transfer from appropriations for contingencies to building maintenance, maintenance structures and grounds, district attorney, professional and specialized services, and animal services, rent and lease equipment for fiscal year 2017-18. 2, discussion and consideration of approval of receipt of unanticipated revenue number 17-132 in the amount of $135,000 derived from special payments, miscellaneous reimbursements, and intra-fund revenues to miscellaneous expenses, office expenses, professional and specialized services, advertising, publications, special department expense, and transportation, travel, education for FY 2017-18. 4 votes required. 3, discussion and consideration of transfer of appropriations number 17-119 in the amount of $238,000 to ensure sufficient appropriations in various budgets in the Madera County Sheriff's Office for fiscal year 2017-18.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Joel Begay, County Budget Director. The item before you today is our annual end-of-year cleanup item. As we draw the fiscal year to a close, we work with departments to consolidate all of the adjustments, so we're not taking 4 or 5 separate items that are relatively smaller in nature and put it all in one item. So the first action, the transfer $129,000, that's a transfer for contingencies to 3 departments that we were projecting would not have sufficient appropriations to meet all obligations through June 30th. First of it's a $50,000 transfer to the DA's office for contracted services for 2 murder cases and charges from Lieber, Cassidy, and Whitmore. The $64,000 is the building maintenance or unanticipated building repairs projects throughout the fiscal year, and $15,000 is animal services to correct an accounting issue that we had at the end of the 16-17 fiscal year, wherein we had encumbrances that tied up appropriations and therefore prevented us from charging them mileage for March to April. The RUR is recognizing higher than anticipated energy rebates and special payments to offset higher than anticipated costs of security services, primarily security services for the county. And then last, the transfer to the sheriff's office. The sheriff's reallocates mainly overtime between their budgets to appropriately reflect where the overtime occurred. But there's also a transfer from salary savings to offset higher than anticipated mileage charges in the current fiscal year. With that, staff from departments are available for any questions. Thank you.
Any questions from the board members? Seeing none. Any from the public? Seeing none. What's your pleasure?
Move to approve.
First and second. Roll call, please.
Call for the vote. Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Supervisor Rodriguez? Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Vote
I
passes.
can't vote because it ain't up here yet. There it is.
Vote passes 5-0.
There it goes.
Before we moved on, I wanted to recognize, my mom didn't fully
Second
come
was,
in here,
Max.
but I wanted to recognize former Madera County Superintendent of Schools, Sally Frazier, just left.
Was she
Oh,
checking?
She was making sure I'm where, because she went to my daughter's awards assembly. I think she was making sure that I was where I said I was going to be. That's why I missed it, you know. Check on this deadbeat dad, apparently.
Absolutely. 7C, please.
Chairman, before the item is called, I just wanted to ask that I'm going to step down from the dais because this involves Lozano Smith, and ask Doug Nelson, former county council, deputy county council for the county, to sit in my
okay.
place.
Yeah. Doug, welcome. As always.
7C, County Administration Department, County Council Budget Adjustment. 1, discussion and consideration of approval of transfer of appropriations number 17-117 in the amount of $580,000. Transfer from appropriations for contingencies general to County Council Professional Specialized Services for fiscal year 2017-18. 4 votes required. 2, discussion and consideration to authorize the Madera County Auditor Controller to pay above the contracted annual cap amount of the Lozano Smith County Council Services Agreement for legal services received by the county through June 30th, 2018.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Eric Fleming, County Administrator, joined with Darren McCandless, who's Deputy CAO in our administrative office. This is most likely going to be a year-end adjustment that we will do every year unless your board prefers to handle it in a different way. But what we have done over the 3-year period that we've had contracted out county council services is held the cap to a point that we figured it was going to be tight. We didn't want to give too much leeway. And as you heard yesterday, we continue to recommend holding it at about $950,000, and that's for core services. So what you have here before you today is this year-end item where we adjust for any unanticipated things that came in over and above the $950,000. And Darren will talk a little bit about kind of the 2 separate buckets that we have.
That's correct. It's probably helpful to have a review of how we structure the county council budget, respect to the services contracted for with Lozano Smith. And there's really 2 components to it, 2 buckets, so to speak. We have the Lozano contract, which Eric mentioned, which is capped at $950,000. That's for core services, which is basically non-litigation. Above that, there's an amount budgeted to cover litigation. Now, some of that litigation work is done by Lozano, but it's done under a completely separate contract, along with work done by several other firms that have similar contracts with the county. So there's really these 2 buckets, and actually there's actually a 3rd bucket because we do pay a very small amount of ancillary costs for some county council membership, negotiation fee, and some online research costs. But that's basically the 2 buckets, so to speak, that we have within the county council budget. So this item before you, though it's seeking to adjust the budget as a whole, that's not all an addition to the cap or a request to increase the cap. It's really affecting both those cap services and the non-cap litigation services. And there's a number of reasons for that. I think Eric can maybe address a couple of those.
You bet. This past year has been there's been some negatives and some positives. Some of the negatives that have impacted this budget have been the ACLU case, which has been settled, and the ongoing matter with the district attorney. Some of the positives, we've completed and established 3 enhanced infrastructure financing districts. That took a lot of legal work. We also did a lot of legal work on the CFD for Tesoro Viejo, and also a lot for the health and social services office complex. So those are positive things that happened during the year, but they did have an impact and were over and above core services. So.
Right. And I guess so maybe the obvious question is this going to continue, or is this going to bleed into the next fiscal year? And to the extent that we can forecast that and kind of predict what's coming, and you never really can tell, this year was a perfect example of that. And we see some of this litigation which is resolved, some of these projects which have concluded. We still have some personnel issues, but we think we can contain those costs. So although this is a significant increase, we don't foresee this continuing into the next year, and we think that next year it's hopeful. We're anticipating that we'll return to a more normal, a reduced level.
And we do manage it day to day very closely. Darren, in particular, he on a daily basis is looking at invoices, monitoring costs, involved in trying to control litigation costs. And we've got a really, I think, pretty revealing chart. We got into looking at some of the historical cost information. And I don't know if you've got that handy, Darren, if we can put that up. I know that we loaded it on. Okay, there we go. We went, I think it's probably more accurate to look back at all the way back to 06, 07, 08 in particular, when we had a fully staffed in-house county council office. And then you can see in 08, 09, 10, we fell off the fiscal cliff. We fell into the Great Recession and really hit the bottom in 11, 12, 12, 13, 13, 14. And as your board will recall, we had this 3-year recovery plan, and we were doing everything we could just to minimize costs, and we were just doing the bare minimum to keep the door open at the county council's office and to do the minimal amount that we needed. And right around 14, 15 is when we started to transition into this new model. So there was some overlap. We had existing county council, actually county council Nelson at the time, and working in conjunction with Regina from Lozano Smith office. And then by 15, 16, we went fully into the Lozano Smith model. I think there was a learning curve probably getting up to speed, so some of those costs were a bit maybe higher than anticipated. So those next 3 years reflect what our costs are, our actual costs are. So if you jump back to 07, 08, when the in-house county council was probably at its peak, just roughly about 2.1 million. If we would have continued on that way, and that what we've shown here is dollars with inflation, right? If we were looking at today's dollars back in 07, 08 to fund that level, we'd be looking at the 2.1 million. And one of the things that we did not plug in, we plugged in inflation only, but we implemented a compensation study, which I think raised everyone on average probably around 7 to 10%. We did not factor that in, and we also did not factor in increasing benefit costs for employees that were in-house. So realistically, we would have been more at about 2.3 million if we would have kept that as an in-house staffed with county employees in today's dollars. So as you can see, that there's a swing of about 500,000-600,000. I believe we can safely say we're still continuing to save, and just having that depth of service and the work product and stuff. So just wanted to show that.
Good one.
I have nothing to add.
Yes. No more? Okay, Brett.
Shocking, right, that my name was there. So yesterday after the budget meeting, I went and met with Eric, Regina, Darren, and Joel, and I can honestly say I'm more comfortable now after that meeting than I was before. I still have concerns and still want to continue to tighten this down so it's as good as it possibly can be. What I've always said was that I wanted to have a single county council that answers to us, that we and they're the ones that doles out all of the or farms out all of the work. And then we talked about I think you have one that does all of the in-house stuff, like what the contract services that you do in regards to when department heads call. It wouldn't make sense to every time they have to call the county council and then that gets farmed out to somebody. There would be some operational efficiencies that we wouldn't get from that. And what we somewhat have that structure right now. And I, in talking with Darren is doing a lot of that. That's what he's doing. He knows which firms are getting farmed out to what, and he has a closer eye on it than I ever really knew. So he does, that does fit into the model that I liked. I just didn't realize how much it did. I didn't know. It just seemed, I thought everything flowed through Regina. So that helped me quite a bit. On that chart, and when I saw the chart, showed it yesterday, that was at the peak, right? That was at 2007, 2008. I think if you took any of our department budgets at that time, you'd see that similar curve, right? When there was a lot of employees, when there was a lot of things, it would be, I mean, it would match to that. We fell off, everything went down. This is more a function of budget and the amount that was able to be spent at that time. So it's a nice chart, but it didn't really, didn't prove anything to me. That you would have seen that same curve anywhere. But some of the questions that I had yesterday, and maybe we can talk about them here, was that I had an issue with was, okay, so if everything flowed through Regina, and is she able to cherry pick, the litigation cases that that come in? So I have a few questions, but I'd like to have Darren and Regina answer. How is the litigation rolled out as things come in?
Sure. Whenever we get notice of a lawsuit, there are instances where it's obvious that this is a suit that's going to require your board's input. So sometimes we'll just come directly to your board, and maybe we will have fleshed out some recommendations, but ultimately we'll look to your board for direction. That's a relatively small percentage of the lawsuits. The bulk of the litigation that we get, we screen through our claims review committee. That's made up of myself, Regina, Joel Bugay, and Auditor Controller Todd Miller. So we'll roundtable those cases. We'll talk about possibilities. I'll talk about what firms we've historically used for certain types of cases, and these are usually suits brought under the Government Claims Act, so tort liability. Regina is involved in those conversations, but she's not involved in the ultimate decision as to whether or not a case is referred to Lozano. Lozano is available. They're in the pool of firms that we use for that type of litigation, but they're only one of a number of possibilities. And really, those assignments come out of discussion amongst the claims review committee. So it's never county council assigning in a vacuum or anything like that. These are all cases that are discussed in our committee.
And thank you. And she had said that when it comes down to choosing, she will step out of the room.
She'll abstain from.
So that's good. That's a good. And then, so as we get into the contract, you look at all the billing. So are we making sure that if it needs to just be, something needs to be researched, is it an attorney doing it, or is it if there's something that in
terms of the billings themselves?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of checks and balances involved with the processing of invoices. First of all, Regina screens them thoroughly before they ever come to us. So they've kind of gone through that first filter of just her looking at it internally. Beyond that, they come to me and they bill their work by matter. So it's not just a invoice for an entire month's work.
By subject.
It's separated out by matter. So, I mean, you can break down every unit of work applied to every single matter that they've worked on throughout the county, and that's for litigation and non-litigation. So we'll go through that. A lot of times I'll end up meeting with Regina. We'll have conversations about certain cases, certain matters, any discrepancies that we might identify. And even beyond that, that capped amount is encumbered in the auditor's office. So, if we're approaching this $950,000 cap, this is actually something that I like about this cap, which is it builds in accountability. I mean, when we get to the 950 cap, we have to come to your board and we have to explain why. So there's a number of checks and balances against that core service contract.
And then one of the things I brought up, for having two attorneys in the same meeting, and there was, and Regina had said sometimes that your hours aren't billed when someone else is in there. What triggers that? At what point are you able to bill as well as they are?
Well, that's definitely something that I think about in terms of the cost to the county in every meeting. A lot of times I do need to be involved in a particular meeting to stay informed, or because it's just better for the county to have the county council sitting at the table. I mean, that's part of it. However, I understand that you shouldn't get billed for two attorneys when it's unnecessary, especially if one is carrying the major workload of taking the assignments from that meeting and working on a document or a contract. So a lot of times I'll lean over and tell Eric or send an email and just say, you're not going to get billed for two attorneys. Now I realize, and then it's either not on the bill or just says courtesy discount and it's zero. But through our conversation yesterday, I realize now even more how important it is to highlight those instances. I'm always thinking about the cap. To exceed the cap, you've asked us to provide general services as county council within a $950,000 cap, and to exceed that cap is uncomfortable. I think the most comforting aspect of it is that our services, I think you said yesterday you're satisfied with the services, and that is really the most important aspect for me, is that we're providing efficient, cost-effective services. But when we exceed that budget amount that you've asked us to do it under, I feel responsible for that. And so in any sort of way where we can recoup those costs or not bill for it. So essentially it's just me saying to my bosses, I'm not going to bill for this time because there were two attorneys there, and they generally say, yeah, that makes sense. And I have to fill out a form, but that's essentially how it works. And I've highlighted that again to Lozano Smith's admin team, that that's going to be also important again, going forward.
Yeah, and to have an accounting of that.
There is always an accounting of it, but now I understand that to actually have a breakdown accounting, that we might be able to run a report. I don't necessarily want to highlight that because we have other clients that, we don't do that for. If there's two attorneys in the room, there's two attorneys in the room. But with the nature of the work that we do, it's different here at the county. And my primary focus is providing Premier, that's our logo, Premier Legal Services. And so if I'm not the one that can write the best contract, I'm not going to be the one in the meeting to say that I'm going to write the best contract. I want one of our dedicated deputy county counsels there that can provide the services that we promise to provide.
And then in terms of these, this one's probably more maybe for Joel. In this item here, we just have it all lumped together in the 580, and they said there's the two separate buckets. Chuck LaRue, if you're listening, buckets. Like when people call it buckets, like we're putting money in buckets. But if we were to separate that out, I mean, most of these other ones, even just the last one had everything separated out exactly how it was going to be going. So to just, because when I see this, I see $580,000 above the 950 cap. And so if we're that far outside of our cap, that's 60% roughly that we're over the cap. That means to me that we're not budgeting correctly. And from what I'd heard, there was prior year to last year that was over and above that came out of this year as well, right?
Right. I think Supervisor, just to clarify, because whether it's cap services, non-cap services, Lozano or non-Lozano, it's all budgeted into one line item in the county council budget. So to adjust, we wouldn't be adjusting separate accounts. That's why they're lumped officially as a budget adjustment. It's a 580,000 budget adjustment. But I think, hearing the comments, I think if we present it, doing an internal breakdown, not necessarily because it's not separate accounts, but really how much of this estimated 580 would hit the 950 cap, because they're all lumped together for budgeting purposes. I would look to Darren, though, to give an estimate on how much of that 580 would be hitting the cap. I think when we look at it, it's really hard to tell.
Well, looking at the cap, the billings from Lozano through April were 925,000. So it was roughly about $110,000 a month in billings, just on average, which means we hit the cap, maybe after the first or second week of May. So let's call it even just 2.5 months left of the year. That's about 262,500 that will hit the cap. And then, so do we really expect to have $317,500 in litigation services in the next 2.5 months?
I'm going to defer to Darren on that one.
In last year's budget, we were very lean in that extra amount that we set aside for, we'll call litigation. I think last year's total county council appropriations was about 1.1. Figured 950 of that was the cap. We had that unexpected litigation in the ACLU matter. I think the total on that was about $150,000. So that decimated the entire amount which was left over to cover litigation above and beyond the cap. We bill, Lozano bills, those litigation services completely separate with a completely different matter number against a completely separate contract. So we can track those. I'd had to just make an estimate as to where we're going to end up because we're not completely through the fiscal year yet. But of that 580, I got to think that at least half of it is the personnel matters, the claims arising out of the DA's office, the ACLU case. Now, again, that total does not hit the cap. The litigation hits the litigation portion of the budget. The personnel, the core services, that hits the cap services. So we will be able to tell how much of the total increase is attributed to each of the two components.
It would be helpful if your board wants us to structure this particular budget in a different way. We're just trying to be fiscally conservative. We don't want to open up the county checkbook and say, hey, we're going to raise it to 1.2 million now, and that's going to be your new core services budget, because then that allows them to kind of back into a number potentially. But if your board's uncomfortable doing year-end adjustments like this, I mean, certainly the direction can be increase the core budget and to try and minimize year-end adjustments. I guess that's just a policy decision.
I mean, I would like to see in the way that we do it that maybe Lozano prepares a budget for the year as to what we can. I know that you never know what's going to come up in a year, but we have a pretty good idea from a history of what could come up, of how much in services, and so we know what we're doing. We're not just taking a wag at it, right? We're not just placing the number of 950 as just a way to keep costs down and come back at the end of the year every year, because a cap, just because it's uncomfortable to come up and ask for it, doesn't mean that cap is now, if every year we come up and ask for it, is that really truly a cap either? There's not as much. I mean, there's still the ability to just go over it whenever you want to.
And I think we can do that. I think we can do a better job of spelling out the workload. In fact, I think that's something that we actually used to do in prior versions of the budget, even all the way back to when we were in house. We would say, look, this is how many resolutions we anticipate, this is how many contracts, this is how much routine work we anticipate.
Yeah.
You're always going to have one-off projects that come off. As you mentioned, litigation is kind of a wild card. You really never know what's going to happen. But as to that core service, as to that cap, I think we can capture that. I think we have enough data, even with Lozano's 3-year history, that we can quantify that and do a much better job of budgeting in that respect.
So and I'm closer than I ever have been to voting for this, to be honest, after our meeting yesterday. But I'd like to see that. That would be something that would help me. I'd also like to, if we could work up the organizational chart showing, you and how you work through that as a part of all of it, then I'm close to being there, because it is kind of how I've been saying. So I think my model is there, your model is there. Again, the service is absolutely there. And, and yesterday I think we said, well, we're getting rid of frivolous lawsuits. Well, that's never going to happen, right? Because, that's fine. That's their name, right? Frivolous. They come out of nowhere because we have deep pockets. I'm just trying to get the best structure that we possibly can have for this, where we are able to manage these costs, because they can easily skyrocket and still provide the service that we need to for them. So I feel more comfortable about it. I'm still I'd like to see an org structure, a budget, to understand why we're getting to these numbers.
And I don't want to speak for Eric, but I think we can do that.
Hey, Rogers.
Yeah, I was just observing your chart, and of course, factors in flux are always unknown, that you can't mathematically determine what's going to happen with that. And as we look at the two issues from last year, this last fiscal year, they're both related. You almost can't dissect one from the other. But the statistical mean, which is the top of the bell curve that I've determined here, is 1.62. And as I see it, the trend is actually stabilized. And the only reason we're out of the curve on the upper end this year is because of those factors that are unknown. And so I see a trend away from where we were in the $2.3 million range, and stabilized in the below 1.5 million. And I think that's a good thing, because it shows a number of things. One, that we're confronting one of the issues we've had in the past with contractual problems. Contractual problems have created a lot of liability that we've dealt with. I think 2015-16 is one of those examples. We were cleaning up some of that poor legislation that passed through that created a contractual disagreement between us and the city of Chowchilla, between us and the previous garbage hauler. And all those situations are now solved, and we're in a different mode when we deal with contracts than we ever have been. And it's a mode of an ounce of prevention that's worth 10 pounds of cure, if you want to use the expression. And so that's really a good trend to have. There is that one factor of human behavior that we can't determine, and we can't control it. And really, the end of this story is not written yet. And it's going to continue to cost the county. And that's unfortunate because of one person. And that's truly unfortunate. But we are managing that as best we can and getting that under control. And in light of all that we can do to do our best for the people of this county, I think we're doing extremely well. So I do see, and I'm glad Brett focused in on the issue of controls, because I've known all along that Darren had a large role in that, but I don't think that was made clear from the beginning. And I think that's, you came on ex post facto, and I think we took it for granted that you knew that those controls were there. And I'm glad you ferreted that out, and that you're comfortable with that and moving into the level of comfort. That's important that we feel that way. And by all means, continue to dog something till you know that you feel comfortable with it. By all means. I'm happy to see this discussion, and I think it's important for the public to know that we don't have an open checkbook, and we are not, we have a new policy where litigation is concerned. And it's been implemented some time ago, and we're getting it under control. Thank you.
Rob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it was really good that you used inflation factor to, to make a comparison as far as cost. What was the inflation factor that was used?
On average, across the 12 years, it was 2.4, I believe. The highest was 3.8, and the lowest was negative 0.4, which I believe was 13-14 fiscal year. We had deflation factor.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. And the second thing is, it'd really be interesting, but I'm going to mention this, but if it's too much of a problem, I don't want to, to have a lot of extra work put into this, but I know that, folks are always looking at, okay, what if we had in-house counsel versus, I won't say outhouse, but contracted counsel. And so, it'd be interesting to see what those costs would be, because with in-house counsel, you do have, the salary, you have the additional costs, PERS and so forth, the additional burden, and then you have to contract out. So it would be, I think it'd be interesting to see what that would be, moving forward, and then that way the public can say, well, if you had, people hired in-house and you don't have these expensive contracts, we can say, well, that's not the case. We've determined that these are what the costs would be if we did have in-house counsel, and then they had to go out and contract out with other firms. And this is the way we do it. And we're actually not only getting a great work product, but we're actually saving money. Anyway,
Thanks.
thank you.
To kind of keep in mind the cost after the 950 is reached, and then after that, perhaps you guys can keep a closer eye on the expenditures after that date. So perhaps not stamp it and let's work on it. Maybe perhaps we can back off a little bit if they're not that important. The company keep that cost down. I think we're all aware here the cost is way up. It's over $1 million. And we have to answer to the people out there. We have to explain why it's so expensive. Somebody mentioned that they could do it in-house for $30,000 to hire one extra person. Well, that's kind of ridiculous. But the point is, it's and people out there buy that idea. It doesn't work that way. We have a good firm. They're doing a good job, and they have an assortment of attorneys to deal with different matters. So I think we're in the right direction here, keeping an eye on that cost. And I think by itemizing it, again, I repeat myself, itemizing a little closer, perhaps we can do, I don't call it doing a better job, but in other words, being more efficient. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. My turn first.
Yeah,
boys.
go ahead.
When you guys said the ACLU, you got to remember that was the DA too, so don't just say
Right.
caused by ACLU.
Right.
This is where it came from. And then when we hired that outside investigator for the DA, that was part of this monies too, right?
That goes into resources.
Mr. Chairman, it was from on the previous item that got charged to the DA budget. That's why they needed an adjustment
Oh, okay.
on item 7B,
Okay.
or
And then-
the major reason for that adjustment.
Yeah, and then on this chart, like that 20607, I wasn't here, but I was the half part, but 20708 at 209 million, 200.9. We used to hire Coda and Co. This is our budget, but when we hired Coda and Co. and all them, like doing the casino MOU, I know some that I was just involved with, the Church Ranch, that was a long trial. I had to go testify in. Now, is that money that we hired from them, and that was just one of them we hired over above our own county council, was that including that 2.09? So we got to remember, those when we have those kind of lawsuits, we could have more tomorrow. Every time we turn around, we have a deal, anticipated litigation. So and I like the way we're doing it. I mean, we literally lost some stuff. I mean, even the MOU that we did was terrible, terrible. So I'm just happy the way we're doing it now. Our contracts are better. Our openness is better. I just really like that. So anyway, Rogers.
Yeah, I want to point out something that Max brought up that I think is really pertinent here. And that is, if you're engineering a building and you got one guy engineering the building and he comes across this very complicated problem of designing a beam, but he's never designed a beam before. Doesn't know how to design a beam. So he's going to have to go and find a professional that understands how to design that beam to get it done. And my point is that we are in a very complex, litigious society. We have, because we are a county, we deal with multiple issues ranging from life and death situations to personnel issues to taxation questions and issues. Our issues are so multi-ranged that they almost encompass the gamut of litigation, with the exception of family practice. And so the complexity of this requires for us to do the best job possible, experts in those fields. You're not going to find one person plus $30,000. That's an insane statement to say that you can handle a complex organization like a county with one person plus another 30. That's just not going to happen. So I think the model is great. I think we're doing the best job possible in these circumstances, and I love the constraints that we're under. I think it's good. We don't want to just open the checkbook and say, here we go. And we're not going to do that in any part of the county for that matter. So I think we're getting great service for what we have. Thank you.
This is
Thank
just
you.
a quick suggestion again, and I want to make sure that everybody knows that I'm not the person that said we can do it for $30,000.
No, you're not.
I want that on the record. So but some of the things that I've heard, there's things that are outside of our control. Most of the things that are outside of our control is found kind of in the litigation side of this portion of the budget. There was one thing that we didn't talk about that actually probably added to this was also privatization. That was something that we had never done before, so there was probably some extra in that. I would imagine there was quite a bit of work in that for the Rolling Hills. But if there's a portion of it that is, a lot of it is outside of our control. We already talked about being able to look back at the data and create a working budget for the contract services and within that cap, and have a real number for what we think for that year. And it doesn't have to always just be 950. I know I've said before, if it stays under $1 million, if it needs to be, $1,050,000 or whatever, but that's a truer cap, then I'm fine with that. And just because I said $1,050,000 doesn't mean that needs to be the number either. And if it could be 900, great, right? But if the way that we budget next year, instead of it just being all in one county council budget, kind of like the way we have, Public Works has their road budget, then they have a separated out Public Works budget for water. And if we had a county council budget for contract services, running the actual county council office within here, and then having a county council budget litigation. And so we can look at break that out and manage both those costs, because managing them together doesn't really make sense, because they're somewhat two different animals.
Yes, Supervisor. Just one comment on that. I think we can come up with models to better track it. I wouldn't advocate two separate orgs, but within the same budget org, having two different categories where litigation and core services are billed. We'll work with auditor's office if we can separate those accounts and have a dedicated account for litigation. I believe we can achieve in the budget what you're asking for without having to break apart the department.
I defer to you on anything budget, because you're obviously amazing at it. But
That's all they agree. It tells the
yeah,
truth.
so that's
Thank you, guys.
with those things. I
Moving
think
on.
I'll be able to get there. But
Any public comment? Seeing none, what's your pleasure, board? A motion to approve?
Have a second?
A second? Roll call, please.
Call for the vote. Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
almost, but no.
Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Vote passes 4-1.
Okay.
Thank you for all your work, guys.
Item number 7D.
7D, County Administration Department, discussion and consideration of approval of proposed revisions to the county travel policy.
Thank you, Doug.
Thanks, Doug.
Yeah.
Darren McCounsell, the Administrative Office. The item before you proposes two revisions to the county travel policy. The first is an update to the meal reimbursement limits, and the second is more of a procedural change with respect to mileage reimbursement. The current county meal reimbursement amounts have been in place since 2005, and in response to your board's request at the time of the last policy update, we reviewed the limits in light of some of the high-cost locations that county staff travel to. And in order to account for varying costs associated with different locations throughout the state, we're proposing a change that would use the federal per diem rates, which provide for higher limits for higher cost areas. And the proposed policy, which is in your backup, would include a link to the federal website, which allows the department to just key in a location. It'll tell you what the meal limits associated with that destination are. And the second change, and that's nationwide, just not California, because we do have some out-of-state travel. The second change does not affect the reimbursement amount with to mileage, but it does alter the procedures and require some additional documentation related to the details of any given trip in order to comply with IRS regulations. And the auditor has developed a form that can be used to prove up this mileage, this required documentation, and that is also included in the new policy. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions, and I believe Todd Miller is here to address any questions as well.
Yeah. Nobody got any questions? I got one. Why are you worried about the IRS, Todd? You got to come up here.
You didn't have to walk precincts, so he's going to make you walk to here.
By the way, congratulations on your hard-fought win.
You too.
Thanks, boys.
The IRS, we're bound by IRS code, just like any other organization, on the documentation required to prove up mileage. There are two types of plans in the IRS's view: a plan where you just give money to an employee and say that's your mileage allowance, doesn't matter. That is wages, as far as the IRS is concerned. In order to be as an unaccountable plan, we have an accountable plan, which means that you have to prove up your mileage. You have to document it. You have to document it in a particular manner to pass their scrutiny. So we're no different than any other business organization or proprietorship. You follow those rules. You follow those rules, you win. You don't follow those rules, you lose.
So the way we've been doing it is not right?
It's just undocumented, and it's not always correct. So we developed a form so that everybody does it right. What we don't want to have is the IRS come in here 3 years from now and go, these are all wrong. Go back and add that to their payroll. Oh, and by the way, you know what? Pay the payroll taxes and pay the interest and pay the penalty and pay the employee share of the payroll taxes. Yeah, we don't want to go there for obvious reasons. So if we do it right the first time, and this is just memorializing it so that we do it right the first time, follow the IRS rules and you win.
Okay. Any other questions, Rob?
I was just going to say, and then one other thing besides dealing with the IRS, it's called dealing with the public. You know, we're accountable to the public to do the right thing, and that's what we need to do. And thank you so much for being in charge to make this change.
Yeah, I think this is good. And the way we set it up, we won't have to go revisit it and change rates every year. We just follow what the IRS approves. And fortunately, we found a government agency that actually breaks that down, because the IRS does not, breaks that down between breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So we just follow their rules and their same documentation. They break that down for us for every piece of travel we do. We don't have to modify this every year and change the rates.
And it takes away the subjective nature of documentation, right?
Right, as long as people follow the rules, but yeah, that's our job, is to kind of make sure we have compliance.
It's easier to follow rules when they're set, and
they're written down.
It's easier to follow when it's one rule for everybody.
There's been a lot of work done on this. It's taken a long time. I know that it went to the unions for their approval and everything else. So it's been a long road, but I think good grief.
Okay.
We might actually have something, Darren.
Any public comment? What's your pleasure, board?
Move for approval.
Second.
First and second. Roll call.
Call for the vote. Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler?
I don't know, I can't vote. Now I can. Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
Okay. Pass. 7E. Thank you, Todd.
7E, Sheriff Coroner's Department, discussion and consideration of approval of transfer of appropriations number 17-104 in the amount of $30,000, transfer from Sheriff Morg's salary, county group insurance contribution to Sheriff Administration equipment furniture greater than $5,000 for fiscal year 2017-18.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Hard fought battle.
Really was.
Celebrating. Amy is not here. Her mother's birthday is tomorrow, so she's on her way to Michigan to celebrate her 80th birthday with her. So
you can't celebrate your celebration.
That's right. Well, I think we're all good. On March 13th, we brought the airplane and the MRAP before the board. The board approved that. At that time, in one of the slides, you recall that part of what we projected out in terms of the initial startup of the cost of the airplane was $35,000 to $40,000 for our engine replacement or engine overhaul. We've received a quote for right in the area of $30,000 for overhaul by the preferred vendor in our area. They're out of the Visalia Airport. And that's why we're requesting this transfer of funds within the budget from what it was budgeted for, which we don't actually need it for, to fund the overhaul of the engine, and I'm available for any question.
Dave?
I was,
Oh, okay.
somebody else made it.
So what else
Then I
kind
got
of
the
costs have we
second.
got? Have you got any pilots yet or lined up or?
Well, we have a number of folks. Well, we've actually already flown missions on 5 different locations. So while we're doing the training, we let's see, it was last week we flew 2 houses that we needed aerial photos of for a SWAT mission related to a Fresno Bulldog gang member that was in our county but doing their stuff down in Fresno, and the other 3 were what we call the more classic overflights like we do during the marijuana season to confirm either they were growing or not growing. So right now we are working on 2 people inside as pilots. We also have a long list of people who want to volunteer to do it, but I'd really rather have some people on board inside to be trained first, to then determine, kind of go through the folks on the outside that would be the folks that we'd use as pilots. On the one mission for the marijuana overflights, we did use a volunteer pilot.
From Madera or?
Yeah, from Madera, yeah.
Okay. So in
It's
the
actually-
other flight, how, did you hire somebody the other one or?
No, they actually did the overflight for the SWAT photos while they were out doing a training, meaning the folks that were training our folks.
Yeah.
During that part,
They went up
the
there
instructor
and trained and took
the
pictures
instructor
too,
took
right?
over the flying, and the deputy started shooting the photographs. So it worked out well. Well, and it was a good use of the. I mean, if we're up there, we can do 2 things at once sometimes.
Yeah.
We might as well do it, right? We're already in the air.
Kill 2
So-
birds with one stone.
And it was kind of an unusual thing because we, in terms of the warrants, we were running them consecutively, not simultaneously, like often happens with gang members. So to have a really accurate layout and a current layout and photos of like how many vehicles would be there, that kind of thing, it turned out really well, and it was helpful for the team to have those photos.
Did they do it already?
Oh yeah, they did it already. It went pretty much went off without a hitch. To kind of get back to a subject that is kind of off the topic here, but we did have one person who didn't want to come out of one of the houses because they thought that he was going to be in trouble for something, and he wasn't. He wasn't the focus. We already had that person under arrest, but we did need to search the house. The guy said, "I'm not coming out." We said, "Well, we're not leaving." He goes, "You're not?" So he came out. It went really well, based on the number of weapons that the target has and the kind of things he's been involved in. It went really well. So again, being able to have the actual pre-photographs for that was really nice. And then on the day of the warrant, we used our drones and the Fresno County helicopter, not at the same time. You know, when the helicopter got on scene, we put our drones on the ground. But when the helicopter had to leave because the guy wouldn't come out, we put our drones back up in the air. So it's just a great asset to be able to see things from the air. So.
Absolutely. Okay. Excellent. Any more questions? What's your pleasure, board?
I move for approval.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Call for the vote. Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier? Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Supervisor
Aye.
Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler?
No.
Vote passes 4-1.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sheriff,
Yes, sir.
will you be delivering the ballots from Oakers to Madera?
I will not. They don't invite me to do that when I'm on the ballot.
Yeah.
And I think with their new process, they actually have enough folks that Rebecca's staff can actually haul those down. But I'm assuming that the results are going to be out a little faster based on this new way we're voting. And I've just personally from the Chowchilla area, we've got nothing but positive feedback about the whole setup. In fact, we saw Justin setting the thing up early Saturday morning when we were going out to have breakfast. Thanks.
The week before, they were up there early Saturday morning at
Oh,
the
yeah.
junior college, Justin and that other guy, so.
That's your anniversary breakfast.
Yes, that was.
Thank you, Jay. 7F.
7F, Treasurer Tax Collector Department. Discussion and consideration to adopt a resolution renewing the delegation of authority to invest certain funds under the control of the Board of Supervisors to the Treasurer Tax Collector for fiscal year 2018-19.
Congratulations on your hard-fought battle.
Yes, I walked precincts, I called people. It was very difficult this
I didn't
year.
see no of your nasty flyers.
Huh?
I didn't see no of your nasty flyers.
I would never send a nasty flyer. Shame on you.
No, that's what I mean.
Anyway, Tracy Kennedy, your treasure tax collector, and this is an annual item, a routine item that we have to do every year to delegate authority to invest. And we were talking about county council, and this is another item that they, and it has to flow through county council in order to get it on the board to do a resolution and everything. So, but anyway, it's actually fallout from Orange County in 1996, 22 years ago, wherein we used to do a delegation of authority to invest until revoked. And then since Orange County, they put in the legislation for it to be an annual renewal. That's why I'm here. Any questions?
It just shows more of that stuff that our county council and stuff has to do with. I mean, a lot of people we don't even realize all the different things they have to go through to even get on the agenda.
Just to get on the agenda, that's correct. I mean, I know that's off topic, but my department alone, we use county council a lot for bankruptcies, tax sale matters, tax sale challenges. We had a hearing right here.
I know, you made him run over budget.
It's probably, you're welcome.
Yeah.
And one thing I hadn't put in before, but was the cash count that they did in January. The auditor does a cash count every quarter. And just to show you what the total amount in the county treasury is now, 495 million. In April, we hit 500 million.
Wow.
So when I came here, we had 50 million.
Wow.
So that's, yeah. So we hit $500 million with a B in April. Pretty amazing.
It is amazing.
County with gross domestic product of over 2.5 billion.
And don't forget, this is school district money is in here as well, and special districts.
Right. Cities.
Cities, well, they have a little money in between apportionments.
Any public comment? Your pleasure, board.
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Call for the vote. Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Rodriguez? Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler? Vote.
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck tonight.
Thank you.
Okay. You guys remember that? Damn it. At 3 o'clock, we're going to have a little play here, and reminder to employees to come down and watch it, including us. I hope every one of you come back and be here for that. And no continuation of budget hearings. We got it all done yesterday. Any pending legislation? Seeing none. Supervisor reports. Rob.
Nothing to report.
Max.
I attended the Joint Powers Authority on behalf of the county.
Brett.
It was under the last one, it's a pending legislator, because Rob's going to become a senator pretty soon. Yeah, so a pending legislator. Actually, I just wanted to say, yesterday, Supervisor Poitras and I attended the Pass the Gavel for Madera High, Madera South. MUSD put it on at their boardroom, where the outgoing ASB president passed the gavel to their new one. Pretty cool thing to do, to go meet with local electeds. And we've talked about mentoring some of the newly elected student leaders from the local elected leaders, meeting with them once a quarter. So if any of you would like to sign up for that, let me know. We'll talk with MUSD. They're going to set all that up, so we can help them to achieve what they're trying to achieve. And I told them, be careful. We'll maybe ask you to help us achieve what we're trying to achieve too. So
Nothing from me. Eric.
Nothing to report.
Regina.
No report.
Joe. Rhonda.
Nothing, sir.
Grand jury. Nothing.
thank you for yours.
Thank you, too. Okay, got it all done. We'll adjourn. Our next meeting is June the 12th. And we'll do the agenda meeting at 1:30. Come back at 3. Yeah, we'll be back here at 3.